Welcome to Drawing Conclusions.
What in the world was that? That was crazy.
That's what it was.
So, welcome to Drawing Conclusions.
Welcome. Yes.
I'm Jessica.
I'm Josh.
And today we are talking about season 3 of Stranger Things, the Netflix series. In case you live under a rock and you haven't heard of Stranger Things.
Under a bridge, under a rock where that bridge lives.
We needed to tell you it was on Netflix.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is season 3 of the show. It's a huge Netflix sensation.
Yes.
Definitely like one of those shows that
people talk about. Lots of people
talk about. And it's been out since the 4th of July, so it's been out over a month now.
Yep.
And we've watched it.
Twice.
We watched it like the night it came out.
Oh, yeah. We binged that thing hard.
And I've been planning to review it for a while, but life being life, we are finally just now getting to it.
Uh-huh.
And so we're going to talk about season 3. And since it's been out a while, we are not going to avoid spoilers. So we just wanted to give you that heads up.
Yep.
Now, before we get started, just want to remind you to
hit that notification bell.
Yes.
A ring-a-ding-ding.
Because then you will be notified when we put a new video up on our channel.
Yep, took a little bit of a hiatus, so we're good. Now we're back.
We're back. And better than ever. Well, maybe.
Same as ever.
At least just as good as ever.
I know. Adequate. Adequate. That's what we're doing. We strive for adequate. Because that's not a word.
But still hit that notification bell because, you know, frankly, what else you got to do? And then...
also, subscribe if you haven't done so already. Like this video, share, comment, all that good stuff.
Sure. Okay.
Moving on.
And check us out on Patreon.
Yes, check us out on Patreon.
Yes, which we are also picking up again here this week.
Yeah.
Okay, Joshua, Stranger Things Season 3. How do you want to start this off?
Well, we usually do the what we liked, what we didn't like. I really like this season. I mean, I've been a huge fan since the get-go.
Yes.
I mean, from like the way they did the opening credits in the original season, which they still do. I mean, just remind me of like all the sweet 80s like sci-fi horror films that were kind of low-budget-esque. I mean, it was just so cool. And this one did not disappoint either. I thought, you know, the gang's all back, and everybody's a little older, summertime, you know. It's around the 4th of July, like when they released the show.
Yes.
And this one centers... Who do you think the main protagonist in the story this time around, like, or the main focal point? Because, like, season 2 was definitely Will Byers. Season 1 was Eleven and the boys, mostly. I mean, they had the side stories, you know, Jonathan and Nancy. Steve had his piece in there as well. This one seems like, I don't know, I think it was really even this time around.
Yeah.
I think everybody kind of got their own little deal.
I think maybe Hopper was a bit more of a focal point this season. I mean, he's always been a central character. Yeah. But I felt like we got a lot more character development from him this season. I don't know. I feel like they all kind of got to move as characters a bit this season. I don't know. It is hard to pick one focal point in terms of the story, like one central story. I feel like instead it was, you know, a few different stories that all tied together really well.
Yes.
And they all kind of had their pieces.
Well, I think that is definitely something that they've done well with this series, is like they have like the separate stories and they all converge at the right time. Yes. And it feels natural and organic and doesn't feel like, oh, what about this? You know, like they've left something out. Right. Like they bring it all along real nice. And that's, of course, the advantage of doing like a series like this. Where you don't have to try and jam it into, like, say, a movie of, you know, 2 hours and whatever. Right. And so it really works well. And this season didn't disappoint. And they added a new wrinkle with the, you know, Billy. Yes. Being more of a character instead of just, like, the 80s douche from season 2.
I would say, like, one of the things I felt like they did in this season is they took these kind of normal 80s tropes and turned them on their head, which they did a little bit in previous seasons. I mean, really, like, Steve was supposed to be the bad boyfriend that was, you know, that was a jerky jock guy, you know, and then Nancy would end up with the nerdy guy, which she did eventually. But, you know, at the end of season 1, she wasn't with Jonathan. She was still with Steve. And Steve actually ended up being a pretty okay guy.
Yeah.
And became more okay as time went on, right? Like, he kind of left his jerky friends behind. He was inspired by the events to, like, embrace the better parts of himself.
Right.
Right, and so...
Plus, he still kept that sweet hair, dude.
Right. To the point now where everybody loves Steve. Like, Steve is one of the favorite characters on the show. And I think they did that again with Billy, where, you know, they could have... In 80s movies in particular, right, they didn't go for the nuances. It was really just like, here are the stereotypical characters.
Right, they're caricatures at best.
And, you know, Billy would have been the douchey guy. Like, the really handsome and yet douchey guy. But...
with the sweet cat killer mustache.
Already in season 2, we got glimpses of why he was the way that he was, right, with his dad.
Yes.
We saw more of that in season 3, and we saw, even though Billy for most of the season is controlled by the Mind Flayer and isn't really himself, you saw more of him. And the other 80s typical movie thing, there were a lot of movies in the 80s, which is, I know it seems like hard to wrap our brains around in this day and age, but there were a lot of movies in the 80s about like these older women getting together with
the younger dudes,
like with their son's best friend or whatever.
Right.
Like totally like these cougar movies, like, and really inappropriate ages, not just like I'm an older woman and here's a 20-year-old. It was like a little sketchy and maybe illegal. And so, you know, they tried to go, they started to go down that road with Mrs. Wheeler, right? It's like, you saw, again, a little bit of it in season 2. They built on it in season 3.
Right, because if you saw the trailers, you see that Billy was the lifeguard. Of course, obviously, you've seen the season, you know what happens.
Right. And then Billy, you know, like inviting her for swim lessons or whatever.
I really do private lessons, right?
But then, instead of like taking that to this, like really, especially in this day and age, like super gross and inappropriate place, like we all have kind of evolved past this 1980s thinking where we can get away with that in movies. You know, they were like, no, Mrs. Wheeler's going to realize that's not how she wants to conduct herself. Like, she's going to snap out of it.
She's not going to throw away her family that she does care about. And her husband, who's kind of a doof that she does love. Yeah,
her husband, like, I think that was a sweet moment where it's like, yeah, her husband is a doof and he's kind of a dork.
Oh, he's pretty oblivious.
Right, and yeah, but he's still a good guy. Like, you know, like that was a sweet moment. He had his daughter, who's named Holly, in his lap, you know, and they're sleeping in front of the TV or whatever, you know.
Or you read a book or something, I can't remember. I remember the scene you're talking about.
But I think I thought that was really nice, because that's another thing, is like, yeah, he's another like 80s, and not just 80s, but stereotypical movie things like, here's the doofus dad who's a total dork, and naturally his wife doesn't want to be with him. But then for her to stop and be like, yeah, he's a good guy. Anyway, so those are some things for me that really worked this season, was when they took the 80s stereotypes, but then they twisted them a bit so that they didn't turn out exactly as they always had in those 80s movies that we grew up with.
Right.
Anyway.
For sure. I really liked Billy's character this season. Yes, he does kind of play the bad guy, but he's not really the bad guy. It's
the Mind Flayer's the bad guy.
It's the Meat Flayer, yes. And again, if you've seen the season, you know what we're talking about. And so, but when you get to, especially later toward the end of the season, when he and Eleven share kind of that upside down moment. Yeah. And she falls into the depths of, you know, whatever Billy's mind is, and sees him when he was happy as a boy, you know, surfing on the beach with his mom, and then watching that all just crumble and fall away, and what's the resulting mess that is Billy's life. I mean, that was...
Well, that was
rough.
That was one of the really cool things to me about this season, was when she's in that scene and she's on the beach and everything's peaceful and she's having this wonderful moment with his mom, but she can see the Mind Flayer in the distance, and as she goes towards the Mind Flayer, that's when she's getting into all of that tortured part of Billy's mind, all those bad memories, all those horrible things that happened to him. And
the kind of the terrible kid that he became as a result.
And you like just this this melding, right, of the evil that is the Mind Flayer and the horrors of Billy's life and of his past, and kind of the sense that the Mind Flayer is playing off of those things to kind of trap Billy. That's part of what he's using against him. Yeah. Anyway, I thought that was a really cool.
Yeah, that was really great cinematography.
Really good.
I mean, the whole setup was really nice. I mean, just going down the beach, looking further, and just getting darker, dimmer, hazier. and the scene pieces where she's watching, again, Billy with his father, who's a real piece of work, and his mom leaving. I mean, just all those things, just really kind of painful. I mean, especially like if someone's gone through that or went through it yourself. I'm sure that may dredge up fun memories.
Right. Well, and then later, at the end of the show, when they're in the mall and the mind flayer's there and Billy's in front of the mind flayer, and he's confronting 11, and they're trying to, and the mind flayer wants to take 11, and 11 uses those memories that she was able to see, right, in Billy's mind of his mom, and
from the time he was happy.
And then that his happiness, his remembering that love and that happiness that he felt, he's able to actually leave the control of the mind flayer behind him and separate himself. And so I thought that was a really cool thing that they did in this story as well.
It throws off that cold emptiness.
Right.
Which is funny because, I mean, that's what the Upside Down is.
Right.
It's cold and empty. And, the only thing there is the mind flayer. And so, it threw that off, and I thought that was a really great scene. And, unfortunately, Billy buys it right there.
Yeah.
Because it, shreds him up pretty good.
But he knows that he's going to die. He willingly confronts that thing and sacrifices himself to save the other kids there. And so, 11 and the rest of the crew. So I thought that was really neat. I really did like what they did with Billy this season, too. Mm-hmm. What else did you like about this season?
I like the addition of the Starcourt Mall.
Sam Goody.
Yeah, Sam Goody. I know, right? Bring back Sam Goody.
Walden Books.
I know. I loved Walden Books. I'd go in there on work breaks and just sit down and read for 15 minutes. It was so fun. It's so funny. Like Starcourt Mall, I mean, that just takes me right back to when I was a kid.
Yeah. The
mall in our town, it looks like Morningside Mall in Sioux City, Iowa. I mean, if anybody is listening who knows that place way back when in the 80s, that really reminded me a ton of that. And, of course, the malls where I live now are, been made over and stuff. But
I think that like every mall, every typical mall in the 1980s,
it was like the cookie cutter, stamped out prefab kind of thing that they made. It's like, here's food court,
and just like all the neon signs and everything.
Totally. And the movie theater.
And that used to be such a thing, right? I mean, that really was, the malls were a new thing kind of in the 80s.
Right.
And then for a long time, that was the thing. Kids would go to the mall during the summer and hang out.
We're going to hang out at the mall. You want to come?
Yeah.
We're going cruising at the mall.
It's just funny because it's something that just doesn't really happen or exist anymore in this day and age. And malls have already gone the way of the dinosaur.
A lot of them have.
Right?
Unless they're central in the dense population area of your town, they got to be a big one. They got to have a lot of big attractions.
Right.
The smaller ones are all but dead.
Yeah. But they're definitely on the decline.
Yes.
And so I thought that was really, anyway, it was a very accurate representation of the 80s in that way.
Oh, it's funny. Again, this show has just such great nostalgia, member berries of, nuggets of fun things from the past. I mean, they're watching Back to the Future at the movie theater, which is hilarious. And, of course, singing Never Ending Story.
Right.
Which was hilarious and awesome all at once. So many, the Sam Goody, the Walden Books, what else was in there?
I don't know.
There's lots of stuff.
The Jazzercise.
Oh, yeah, the Jazzercise. Of course, the soundtrack. They had a lot of great tunes this season as well, they've had from previous ones. And I did like that this season was a little more lighthearted.
Yeah.
And, of course, the inclusion of the Soviets.
Yeah.
As the bad guys.
Well, yeah, I mean, they had to obviously at some point go to the Soviets, right? I mean, they
kind of hinted that in the first season in particular.
Right.
Because, they're using 11 as a spy. Instead, she freaks out and when she makes contact with the Demogorgon and rips the hole open, the gate open, and so...
Well, and then also when the government goes to the Wheelers, they try to... Well, Mr. Wheeler's like, oh, is she Russian? They're like, sure, let's run with that. Like, we'll let him believe that she's working for the Russians, this little girl.
The Soviets, in Hawkins, Indiana.
Yeah, the Soviets. Yeah. Anyway, but so I like that they went there, and of course they did stuff a little different with that too.
Yeah, and if you grew up back then in the 80s and you're a child of the 70s like we were, or are, whatever. We was.
Well, we were born in the 70s. I don't consider myself a child of the 70s because I don't even remember the 70s.
Well, yeah, but we were born then, so that's whatever.
Yeah,
we grew up in the 80s. Whatever.
Right.
Anyway.
Child of the 80s.
The Russian threat was, we could say, it was winding down, but, like, it really didn't start to do that till, like, the latter end.
No, like, when I started middle school, people were still seriously concerned that we were going to have nuclear war, World War III with the Soviets.
Well, I do remember...
Sure, and that was after 1985 when I started middle school.
Right. Well, I do remember, like, doing the air raid drills.
Yeah.
Like, in some of my schools. Like, early on, like, first, second, third grade, we did do that.
I don't remember air raid drills, but...
We had, like, one or two. Mostly they were tornado drills, but...
and then, of course, like Red Dawn.
Oh, yeah, I know. That was totally referencing, like, a total nod to Red Dawn. And, of course, the monster, the Mind Flayer, really reminiscent of John Carpenter's The Thing.
Right.
Which is one of my all-time favorite shows. That show's awesome.
And the Duffer Brothers have said that was a major inspiration for this season, was The Thing.
Yeah.
You've done some really gross pictures depicting John Carpenter's The Thing.
Yeah. It's a great show. If you haven't seen it, check it out. But be prepared for ew. Because there's lots of that.
So I would say that's one thing that I thought this season really amped up, is it was a lot gorier. There's a lot more ew.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot gorier.
All the gooey people and everything was just really nasty.
The rat popping.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty grisly.
Yeah, all of the whole thing was really gross. So that definitely was amped up a lot in this. Oh, we have to talk about Carrie Elways as the evil mayor.
Oh, yeah. Oh, he was the best. That's right. Carrie Elways was the great, just mayor D-bag. Oh, it was so funny.
And that's just like such a tropey thing too, right? Like this...
Well, yeah, the greedy
American,
mayor,
the
corrupt.
Greedy politician, like,
it's like
willing to make the deal with the devil to...
I know. Totally. There's
screw the townspepeople, whatever.
My pockets are lined. I'm good. Yeah, his house is totally sweet with like the zebra skin rug, which was fake, but that was funny, that whole part. But that was great. Hopper's shirt, totally Magnum PI. Yeah. It was awesome.
Oh yeah, the whole Magnum PI.
Yeah, that was awesome. But yeah, Carrie always as the crooked mayor was spot on, and I don't know.
So all the nostalgia obviously is a huge part of Stranger Things, and a huge part of why it's so popular and has captivated so many people. Right, is all the throwbacks. But without if that's not enough to sustain a series like this.
No, you can't just build. Hey, we got throwbacks.
So I want to say the story itself was good. I thought it was well crafted and interesting. I thought the pace throughout the season was good. I liked the ways that they pushed the characters. Like they were still the same, but they grew and developed and changed, and you saw different parts of them. I thought the acting and the performances were solid throughout.
Yeah, I did like the addition of Maya Hawke's character, Robin.
Yeah, she was really fun.
She was really good. She gave a strong performance. The Russian guys were all good. The one who played Alexei he was funny, and that whole thing with the guy who played, was it Bernie?
Yeah, the conspiracy theory journalist guy.
He's back again. I think it was Bernie. I can't remember. He was great, and they had a good rapport. The cast just works so well together. It just didn't feel like anybody's like, they don't really belong in this.
Right.
Everybody was really great. And I agree. The story on its own merits is just so strong. It's so good. And they craft these things so well. Like we said at the beginning, they have these different stories going on, different threads with the different characters, and they all come together at the right point, at the right, it just...
Yeah.
It's really cool.
So, but can we talk about maybe a few things that didn't work for us in this season?
Yeah, we praised this thing to the hilt.
Yeah. So is there anything that didn't work for you, Josh, that you, or things that you just didn't quite work?
Didn't quite work?
Yeah. Or things you wish they would have done a little differently?
Maybe. I don't know if I want to talk about it though.
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm gonna talk about the Maya Hawke thing. So the whole thing with Robin being a lesbian, I'm going there.
Okay.
Because I felt at the time when we watched it, I was like, what? It like totally jarred me. Didn't seem consistent with anything that had happened previously in the season.
Setup,
like, right.
sure.
Like there was no setup for it, which people are like, oh, that's what makes it a great twist. But then reading an article where Maya Hawke admits that it was not originally supposed to be that way and it was something that they kind of decided to do halfway through filming.
Right.
Then it makes sense why it seems so jarring and it seems so out of place with everything that's happened before.
Right.
So I want to say like that was like if you felt that way, that was legitimate. That you felt like it was shoehorned in because it was kind of. That's basically how they approached it.
Yeah.
But I also want to say like I did have an issue with how Steve reacted to her news because
this is 1985 in Hawkins, Indiana.
It's not, okay, I understand what our modern sensibilities are and that we have evolved into thinking about all of this differently, but I was alive in 1985. Yeah, right. I was alive in 1995. And I can tell you that I don't think a single teenage boy in 1985, especially one like Steve, would have reacted so calmly or with, I mean, I'm not saying that he would have like
shunned her
or not been her friend or whatever, but like there should have been a bigger reaction from him instead of him just being like, oh, and then they never come back to it. And I get it, they weren't trying to make it like this big thing and it's not like the focus of the story, and so why dive into it in that way? Then it's like drawing more attention to it than is necessary.
Yeah.
But then my question is, why then have it in there at all? Like, if you're, like, to me, especially since all of these things are like so true to the 80s, to throw that in there in a way that was so not true to the era in which this took place, to me was kind of a disservice in a way to having it in the story at all. And I wish they'd kind of just left it alone.
Well, if they're going to pick it up, why not wait till season 4?
Right, like and maybe they will. Maybe they'll come back to it and there will be
sure they will.
More that they do with it to make it more realistic. But I just felt like Steve's reaction should have been, I mean, again, not saying like, oh, it won't be your friend, because they've already been through a lot. And I think, they've
already got that bond.
Right, they already have, yeah, right. Like, I mean, they've been through a life and death situation together. So I do think, I'm not saying that Steve would have been like, what? You're disgusting. I hate you. Get away from me. Or whatever.
Right.
But I just think he would have been more surprised. I'm guessing that is the first homosexual, lesbian, or gay, whatever person that Steve had known he knew.
Right.
At that point in his life. Like, maybe he said things like that about other people, teased people about it, whatever, throughout his life. I'm sure he did, because... Hey,
it was the 80s.
In the 80s, guys called each other gay all the time, right?
Yep.
So,
and worse.
But like people weren't really out in small town Midwest America in the 1980s where he would not be surprised by it.
Right.
So I'm just saying.
Yeah.
The other thing is, sometimes I feel like with this season is they are too obvious in the throwbacks. And they go a little too hard on the nostalgia. We're rewatching season 1. We watched season 1 and season 2 to prepare for season 3. Watch them again, and now we're watching season 1 again.
Right.
And season 1 to me is still the strongest season of the 3.
I think so.
And we've been talking about why. Why is that the case? And and I'm going to let you say why you think it is, because I think your point is really valid too. I think it has a lot to do with it.
Okay.
But I did want to say that one of the things for me is, yes, there's a lot of nostalgia and like callbacks and throwbacks and stuff in season 1, but I felt like they did them in a much more subtle way.
Right.
And I think in season 2 and season 3 especially, they just keep pushing it further and further. It's like they're like, oh, people are really into the nostalgia, so we're just like going to amp it up. And like they almost like fall back on it too much.
Well, it seems like, since like, 1985, the 80s are in full swing, all these great things had come out, Back to the Future, huge 80s film, very, very, very popular.
Yeah.
And, obviously they're at the mall and all the stores that we all reminisce about.
Yeah. I mean, well, that's all good because that's all like real. Like it's what really would have been happening in the 1980s. But I don't know. Like I said, sometimes I just feel like they push it a little too much.
I think you're right. I mean,
they rely on it a bit too much.
Yeah. I think the soundtrack for season 3 was probably the least strong. had the least strength for all 3 seasons thus far. I mean, it has some great tunes, but that's like what season 1 and 2 had going for it, especially season 1. A lot of obscure tracks.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, oh yeah, these are an early 80s band. But it's like, unless you listen to that kind of music, you don't know it.
I'm wondering if part of that was a budget thing, though. You know, where it's
probably.
Like they use more obscure things because they wouldn't be as expensive.
Rolling in cash. We can buy some better tunes. That's probably.
But that's funny because that's true. Like you feel like that's the story better. So, but what we've talked about some other things that you felt made season 1 stronger than season 2 and season 3.
Well, season 1, I always felt like at the time it was a really new idea, you know.
Yeah.
And they took all these great things and put it into this story. But I think the thing that works for me in season 1 is like the mystery is so fresh, and then the way it just slowly unravels right to the end, it works the best.
Right.
You know, I mean, Will Byers in the other season, especially season 2, he's a main character. In this one, he's hardly in it, but it's like everything's about Will. You know, everybody's looking for Will. You know, and they find other characters along the way, but it's just like the pacing and the way it unravels, like I said, it to me is just the best.
Yeah, it's. I do think the mystery is a large part of it. It's like you see the Demogorgon in pieces. You know, you haven't seen the whole thing yet.
Right, the first glimpse
not
you get.
Really, you know, you haven't gotten a really great glimpse of it.
Yeah, I mean, you get like a small piece of it, like when Barb's in the pool, and the upside down.
Right.
And like you don't get another good look at it again until you see like the photograph that Nancy pieces back together of Barb.
Right.
You know, it's in the shadows behind her in black and white.
And even like
see it again, like when Nancy goes into the upside down. I mean, it's like you only see parts of it, like it's crossing behind a tree, you know, where she's hiding from it, and you just mostly just hear it.
Right.
And so I mean, it's just like again, it's one of those things where older movies, frankly, did this better with limited technology. Seeing the creatures doesn't work usually.
Right.
Because when you get a good look at him, you're like, oh, it's a rubber guy.
Right.
You know, guy in a suit. But when you hear it, you catch glimpses. That in Alien worked fantastic. You don't really see the whole thing actually ever in that entire show until the very, very end when it falls into space. Even then, it's in darkness. And that works. Letting your mind run with it.
Right.
And letting you fill in the blanks, letting you experience the terror and the fear and the adrenaline. It works so much better. You know, Jaws the same way, and that one happened because the stupid shark wouldn't work.
Right.
And I just think that works so much better. Whereas in the other ones, they had a better budget. They could do some digital things, and while it does work, but they have to do it differently. And I do think they were successful at it because like the Demodogs were pretty cool, and they didn't like super show them all the time, and they obscured them through like mist and darkness too, and still allowed that to work, but
just the mystery of the whole story, like what is really going on with 11? What's really going on with this lab? You know, and you hadn't seen
where is Will Byers?
Where is Will Byers? And
what happened to Barb?
You hadn't seen the whole Upside Down yet, and you weren't really sure what the full scope of the Upside Down was until like the very last episode. It's like when Joyce and Hopper finally go in. Really all the way into the Upside Down, and they walk throughout the town, and you really see what the full scope of it is. Like there's this, it's not just in the Mirkwood, right? It's not just in this one place. It's like the whole entire
the whole world, pretty much.
Has this shadow dimension beneath us, right?
Yeah, what they call it, the shadow realms.
Yeah, you know, and so I think that the mystery of it just really works, and I do think that the ages of the kids helps, I have to say.
Yeah.
Them being younger in the first season, it just amps up the tension, right? The older they get, the less afraid you are for them somehow. They don't seem as fragile, right? And as vulnerable. I mean, it's just one of those things about kids. It's like, you know, when kids are little, you feel really protective and scared for them. And not like teenagers are invincible or whatever, but...
They think they are.
Yeah. But just how much the kids have aged, I think, in between the season 1 and season 3. For me, somehow, like, it makes it a little less tense because I'm not as worried. And especially because they've been through it before. Now I'm like, well, now they're kind of equipped. They know how to deal with these things, right? It's like, this is not their first rodeo. And now they're older. And 11's more like in command of her powers and...
Right, but at the end of season 3, she kind of loses her powers.
Yeah, so that'll be interesting to see where they take that.
Right, how they'll do season season 4, right? So that'll be interesting, and with fantasy shows, I mean, who knows? Maybe Billy won't stay dead, but
oh, I would hate that. I mean, I like him or whatever, that actor, but that would be stupid. Okay, so but
I agree, but
I am really interested to see where they go with season 4.
Yes.
It is my firm belief that Hopper is alive and well.
I think so too. You can't kill off like one of the main characters like that.
No, and if not, then basically Stranger Things is dead to me. Just kidding. So
how can you do that? Come on.
But I think we highly recommend season 3 and all of Stranger Things.
Yes.
Season 3 was excellent. We'd love to hear what you thought of season 3, how you think it ranks in comparison to the other seasons. If you think we're totally wrong in our assessment of what worked and what didn't work in this season. Josh, anything you want to add?
So season 3 does have a post-credit scene.
Oh yeah.
Stick around for that.
Well, if you've been watching this whole thing, you probably have seen all of season 3, right?
I would think
because
so.
Otherwise, you just got a lot of stuff spoiled for you.
For sure. But we got to talk about that. I mean, like at the end, they got the big, laser point opening the wall, the rift.
Yeah.
And Hopper's trapped on the other side of this big spinning electrical storm, and people are getting shredded on the other side, and so it's like, oh, and it blows up, and it's like, and he's gone, and you think, oh no, he's dead. It's like, really? I don't think so. But then in the post-credit scene, they go back to where the season 3 started, which was in Russia, and these guys walking down this huge,
like way underground,
stairwell heading down.
Yeah.
Talking about
many floors under the earth.
The thing, and oh, I'll feed it the American? Nah, feed it this other poor sap. And so they throw this poor guy in a cage, and out comes a Demogorgon that these guys have captured, the Russians have captured, and have been feeding it people. And so who is the American? Well, it's got to be Hopper.
Well, maybe. There are other theories out there.
I know, I've heard them. I disagree.
But whoever it is, I don't think that Hopper is dead. I think that there's some other explanation for what has happened to him. So whoever ends up being the American that they are referring to in that scene, whether it's Hopper or somebody else, I believe that Hopper has survived, and we will see him in season 4.
Well, my theory is that he went through the gateway with these Russian troops.
Right.
Because the United States troops go down there with Paul Reiser's character, raid the base. There's nobody there.
Right. All the Soviets are gone.
Yeah, they didn't all die in the explosion with the whatever.
No, they were still around afterwards. Yeah. They were chasing Joyce and the guy that we can't remember his name.
I want to say his name's Bernie, but I don't think that's right.
No, I don't think it is right.
I'll call him Bernie. Beardy. He was Beardy. That could be him. Anyhow.
Anyway.
So yeah, I think he went through there with the Russians and they captured him because obviously he's not one of them. And they're locking him up. So that's my take.
Yeah.
Let's hear your thoughts. Like we said at the beginning, if you haven't subscribed, please do like, comment, share.
And
check us out on Patreon.
Is there anything you want to say about this amazing picture that you did of Billy and the Mind Flayer?
No. I'm just kidding. So, those who have been watching, like I use this particular technique and style in a nod to Drew Struzan, one of my favorite all-time artists who did the original Thing poster. Not the original Thing, but the John Carpenter's Thing, Back to the Future, Big Trouble in Little China, those posters. And so kind of doing that with these just to try to keep up the 80s theming of this series. And I liked Billy's character arc in this season, so I wanted to do that and throw a nod out to that character. Sweet cat killer mustache and all. So,
well, I think it turned out awesome.
Thanks.
It's a really cool picture. All right. Thanks for hanging with us for this spoiler review of Season 3 of Stranger Things. Like we said, leave us a comment. Let us know your thoughts. Tell us how wrong or right we are in our assessment of the season.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thanks.